Alright, time to expand my Ash Nomads army. I heard that Stormcallers are pretty good, so let's take a look at those and see what we can do about... What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Toast Hammer. I finally moved my mic boom arm, and I'm finally adding to my Ash Wastes Nomads by making a couple of Stormcallers out of just the basic kits, because there ain't no way I'm paying those prices. But they seem like they're really important units for the Ash Waste to function properly. So let's see if we can sideline those forge rolled prices and that hard to work with resin served two delicious ways. The first variation I'm going to do takes only plastic from the normal Dusk Runner Rider kit, as well as the basic Ash Nomads kit. Nothing else is required. So if you have those two kits, which if you're building Ash Waste Nomads, you probably do, you can build a Stormcaller from just the plastic in those kits. Literally nothing else. I'm not using any homemade bits. I'm not even sculpting anything. The other one, I'm going to do a little bit more sculpting, a little bit more in-depth kit bashing to get something that looks a little bit more unique and perhaps a little bit more authentic to the target miniature. But let's go with the easy way first. Now, the sort of most important part in both of these kit bashes is going to be changing up the silhouette from the normal rider kit. You can see I've actually, in the normal riders, omitted some parts like the flag on the back and the horn on the bugs in order to differentiate their silhouettes more from the Storm Rider kit bashes. And I've actually sort of purposely made them be in the same pose while the Stormcallers are going to be in the other pose. What that means is there's like some awkwardness in like the arm gap that I can just fill with plastic putty later to get the effect that I want, but otherwise these were put together pretty much according to instructions. Now, when building a conversion such as this using just plastic parts from other miniatures kits, you want to be sure that you're modeling for disadvantage. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you take a look at Mini Compare, you can see that the Stormcaller is just a little bit taller than the normal rider, which in a real line of sight game like Necromunda matters quite a bit. Modeling for disadvantage means that you're making actually a bigger footprint vertically than is required here in order to make sure that you are not being accused of modeling for advantage, which is the other way around, where when your kit bash is a little bit smaller and easier to hide behind cover, that way you won't get any salty players mad at your kit bashing because of some perceived unfair gameplay advantage. So in order to do that, the first thing that we're going to do is just add those extra bits that we were missing from our normal riders. The flag in the back, the horn on the bug, etc. And we're also going to add a backpack from the normal Ash Waste Nomads kit in order to bulk up that vertical profile even more, since we can't really do that with sculpting for this miniature. Our pose is kind of locked in with how these riders are positioned. For that same reason, I can't do a head swap here for a leader's head, so I'm just going to have to make do with one of the normal rider heads for now, but specifically one that I'm not using already, so we do get that important kind of variety between our models. Alongside that, I thought I would try to attach the kind of rope tethered arm to him, but it turned out I was using the wrong kind of bug base for that to work out. So later on, I just decided to kind of chop that bit of the horn off and make it look like he has a broken horn instead, because that's just an easier fix than trying to fix anything else with that. But you could just use the normal horn here as well. So with that cloth tether kind of out of the question, I scoured through the normal Ash Waste Nomads kit to find a suitable left arm for him, and I came away with this pretty cool claw-looking weapon. I'm not sure if it's any good in the game specifically, but I think the Stormcallers don't have that much equipment options available to them. So I'm not super worried with WYSIWYG for these models specifically. I think they kind of have one loadout, basically. But it is Necromunda, so there's probably some options there. I honestly have not looked it up, and they just came out with a new book that I don't have, so don't quote me on that. But the other important component of this model is going to be his staff, which we can take one of the pikes, again, from the normal Nomads kit, because we're using both of the pikes in the mounted varieties already. But this is actually good because it also changes up the profile even more, and it changes up that silhouette. We're going to cut off the saw blade and glue on one of the sort of banners that are normally worn on the backpacks to serve as the head of this staff. I covered this already in my previous Nomads video, but I typically don't put the banners on the Nomad models. I think it doesn't look super great, except for leaders specifically. And these guys do seem to be more of a character or more of a leader. So I figured that both the backpack and the banner on the staff kind of make sense in this context. And if you look at the Stormcaller proper model, there's a lot more of that sort of like flowy cloth moving around and stuff like that. And with all that said and done, that's pretty much it. There's pretty much nothing else to do here besides finish gluing them together and giving them a base and giving them a prime. And that's, you know, the first Stormcaller done and dusted with little to no hassle at all. And it's just using the components that you probably already have if you're going to be building Ash Waste. Let's say you wanted to get your craft on a little bit more though. So let's take this to another level hobby-wise. In this version, we are actually going to be repositioning the rider, and that's going to be serving as the basis for a lot of our kind of crafting and modeling decisions. We're going to be putting them higher up on the mount, which will serve to build up that vertical profile even more and allow us to use a head swap with the leader head from the original Nomads kit to give them that extra air of distinction a little bit. We're also putting not one, but two of the sort of back posts by putting one on the normal way and then shaving the flag one down a little bit and connecting it to a connection point on the first post, making it, again, a little bit more regal, a little bit more ornamental, and just kind of throwing that idea that this is a more elite warrior back into it even more. We're going to slap a backpack on this guy as well, and we're going to take that cloth tether arm and we're going to cut the cloth off of this one, and then we're going to take another arm, the sword arm specifically from the normal kit, and we're going to cut the sword away from that as well and position those together. Now you might think that this would be a place for the staff to go, but that's not quite what I'm thinking with this model. But before we get to that sort of final secret sauce there, what we need to do is cover up this hideous gap that is between the main guy's legs. And we're going to go with my favorite frenemy, Tamiya Putty Quick Type, to handle that task. Now this is overall a pretty good workable putty. It has a lot of nice bonuses over green stuff that you might want to consider. It doesn't shrink, and it doesn't, and it can be sanded and worked after it's dried, which is really nice. However, it's not going to make you magically a better sculptor, as you're going to now see. I wanted to just sort of extend a tunic under this gap to fill it up. And I thought a great way to do that would be to, just get a flat sheet of putty and stick it on there. So I had the smart idea of using parchment paper, a pretty non-stick surface, to try and flatten this putty out without actually making any fingerprints or unseemly marks or things like that. So I tried to roll it out between some parchment paper, and it just immediately got irreparably molecularly bonded to the parchment paper. I'm not exactly sure what was supposed to happen there or what I thought would happen, but it didn't work. Maybe I should have been using wax paper instead. Maybe that's totally my fault. I'm just not experienced enough with sculpting yet to know precisely what I did wrong, but hey, warning for your hobby selves, save yourself the trouble, don't use parchment paper to do this. After a lot of finagling and basically just retrying to put it in the proper position a bunch of times, I got it in a place that looked pretty good and started smoothing out all of the wrinkles and unseemly folds with a soft sculpting tool. Gingerly, of course, because it's very easy to accidentally knock it fully out of position when you're doing this. I probably should have done this before I put on the arms, to save myself some of the hassle of trying to position it properly, but I'm not a smart man. The next two parts were the kind of finish for this model, which is to make a staff and to put the stuff in his hands. So first, for the staff, we're going to cut a piece of brass rod to length, measuring from the staff of the other model to make sure we have something pretty equitable to what we need. And then we're going to take some of the fancier, more alien-looking skulls from the Games Workshop Skulls kit to make a sort of a decorative, tribal-esque staff. And it's looking pretty good, but it's not looking perfect. It lacks that sort of slapdash construction that you would expect from something like this with the shiny brass rod. So we're going to cover that up with some very thin masking tape. I believe this is 1 millimeter width masking tape that we're just going to wrap around it. But because masking tape is not a super strong bond, we're going to cover that in a layer of super thin super glue to make sure it is strongly bonded to the surface and not going to warp and unwind itself later on down the line. So we have our staff totally done, but that's not what we're putting in this guy's hands. I still really like the idea of these guys guiding their riding beasts with some sort of harness or something like that. So instead of the cloth thing, which wasn't working with the torso that I chose, we're instead going to use some fine modeling chain instead. This chain is marked at 0.6 millimeters. I don't know what is measured at 0.6 millimeters, but that's the kind that I got, and it seems to be the right size for this application. We're going to be using 3 different lengths of chain, which I'm pre-measuring and then clipping to length before gluing in. First, I tried to use the ultra-thin super glue because I thought it would make a stronger bond with these small chains. It turned out to just be a mess. It was a mess anyway, but using a more normal consistency super glue turned out to be nice when I could just kind of dab it on and sink the chain into sort of the gel there and let it finish. Being very careful to not disturb it because any slight shake absolutely knocks the chains out of position here. I even did have to hold them upside down at some points and things like that to ensure that the chains were going to be drying in the proper positions, but I did want to make sure that it looked like gravity was still affecting them, so I tried to do that, but then I wasn't gluing the chain in that position itself. What we do after the super glue holds on the hands and the harness are dried is we flip it right side up, get the chains hanging in a natural looking position, and then we use the extra thin super glue to run through each link of the chain and basically coat it to make sure that chain is stuck in that position and won't flex or shift during play, which can upset the paint job or scratch things and stuff like that. So we're going to lock it into place with this extra thin super glue. After that, it was basically just a matter of putting these guys on bases, getting the basing done, and slapping some primer on them. And we have 2 full Stormcallers made with just materials I have around. Honestly, even the one that took a little bit more hobby and effort did not use very much costly materials. It was still just using plastic from the Nomads kit and I guess the Skulls kit, some masking tape, a little piece of brass rod and a little bit of putty and a little bit of chain. That stuff isn't that expensive, so you can absolutely be saving a lot of money here by kit bashing your Stormcallers instead of putting up the cash for those Forge World models at those insane prices. So without further ado, let's take a look at our Kitbash Ashwaste Nomad Stormcallers. very much hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, as it always helps the channel. And if you want to see more kit bashing content, ways to save money, conversions, things of that nature, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single one. And if you're interested in joining the community, why not check out the Toast Hammer Discord? And until next time, peace!